We'll do the fan art, and then we will actually talk about my personal experiences. So, first of all, we have a piece here from You Love Nana. They said it's a work in progress, going to fix some things before coloring, but this is the post from when they did color it. So I'm not going to lie, because the color of the outfit was so close to flesh-toned, I almost thought it was a stream bikini at first glance when I was looking at it on my phone. I know it's not the case, but it was very cute. It was very close to that. The next one we have is from Skit. Tried to draw a cyberpunk/dystopian future version of Suris. Only pencils for now because exam season starts soon. Tomorrow, and I might not finish this for a long, long time. And that's understandable, Skit. P.S. Oh god, sorry for the lighting. I didn't realize it was this bad. I mean, the lighting seems fine. I can very clearly tell everything that's going on the image, so I would not push yourself that hard. The next one we have is from Mathematical Cabbage, a quick slime Suris, probably thinking about and or being cute for Raz. Oh, thanks, Mathematical Cabbage. They are responsible for a lot of stuff on this channel now, in terms of directions. All right. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it in the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's talk history stuff. History of me, history of the channel. Okay. I'll wait. Okay. There we go. Okay. No, stop. Shut up, me. Do not speak. Nobody wants to hear you speak. They want to hear me speak. Or you or not me. So I have, as of right now, over 1,000 videos on YouTube. And it feels kind of insane that we've gotten here. So maybe we should just do a very quick rundown of how we managed to get where we are. I did a video thanking all of the artists, everybody who mechanically was involved in getting the channel to where it is. But it's weird to think that I'm where I am politically, where I am mentally, when I think about how I grew up. For those who don't know, I grew up in Pensacola Christian Academy. It was basically a Christian compound in Pensacola. Now, PCA was also known as Prison Camp of America if you went to any of the public schools, because PCA was known for being nightmarishly strict on every student who actually happened to be in the school. We weren't allowed, like, social media wasn't a thing when I was growing up at first, but I know that when I left school, I learned that, like, you could get suspended or expelled for having, like, a MySpace of all things, back when that was relevant. So it was a very strict environment. I remember liking Pokemon, liking Yu-Gi-Oh!, liking Harry Potter, but receiving notes from the school that if I played Pokemon, I would go to hell. Literally, that was a thing that they threatened children with for playing a video game. And I remember getting that note and handing it to my mom, and just, it was weird to me that she was, like, looking at it and going, yeah, no, that's not true. I was willing to side with her belief system there more so than the actual schools. The school was strict enough to where I always felt like there was something wrong. But I always found myself gravitating really, really strongly towards Revelations as a book in the Bible. I ended up taking a class on Revelation specifically. I read and reread the Left Behind series over and over again. I just found myself enamored with that to the point where I would constantly ask my teachers, when were we going to talk about Revelations? Little did I know, they didn't want us talking about that until like 10th grade because it was supposed to be just that traumatizing, despite the fact that I read it like it was an action book of all things. The school itself did not allow people to talk at any point in time unless you were specifically at recess, not PE, recess. And there was a designated difference. Now, granted, it was all called recess, but we all knew there was a divide. If they said you get to go into the jungle gym, that was a recess time. Yay, you could talk. But if you were doing like a sport, like kickball or something like that, then you weren't allowed to talk. That was when we know, okay, we were doing PE stuff. We couldn't speak to each other. So that was that made it very hard to actually learn how to communicate with people growing up. Because even at lunchtime, we weren't allowed to speak to each other. We had 5 minutes at the end of lunch to talk, and that was it. If you tried to speak beforehand, you got suspended or you got detention. By the time I was in 5th grade, I had way more detentions than I even want to count. It was weird because when I moved from PCA to Brown Barbs Middle School, I suddenly magically stopped getting detentions. It was almost like the school was the problem, not actually me. But regardless of that, when I got to Brown Barge, things were really weird for me. So you remember, I wasn't allowed to speak at Pensacola Christian Academy. Christian fundamentalism had been beat into me, so there were a bunch of things that I had in the back of my head that didn't necessarily... They didn't germinate until later. I knew that, according to the Bible, according to what I was raised in, being gay was wrong. I knew that masturbation was wrong. I knew a bunch of these things because I had been told them, but I never actually took the time to process what they might mean, or even if I really knew why I believed those things. So fast forward to Brown Bars Middle School, and I am scared of swear words, of all things. People who swear around me make me really uncomfortable. People just speaking around me make me uncomfortable. People with earrings. Like, if a guy had an earring, I remember at one point we were in the middle of what was called the shadow program, where you had to shadow a kid who went to the school you wanted to go to, and I wanted to go to Brown Barge, so you would shadow that kid and see if you wanted to go to that school after spending a day at the school with them. And I remember shadowing a kid and seeing a kid for the first time that had an earring in, which was not allowed in PCA. You couldn't even have a t-shirt with a graphic on it in PCA. And seeing this, it was like a culture shock to me. It took a lot of adjustment. I didn't make many friends in 6th grade. I made a couple, but nothing really noteworthy. I still ended up hanging out with some of my old friends I had made from PCA, the few of them I was allowed to fucking talk to. Because for me, I had never been given the tools to socially communicate with people. The thing that actually gave me those tools, awkwardly, was a combination of discovering MMORPGs and card games. Playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Gave me a medium to speak to people. If I was sitting across the table from somebody in a card game, I was face-to-face with them. I had to speak with you to declare my moves, and it gave me a chance to actually make friends with people finally. Because I was in an environment where I had to communicate. There were no options. Pandora Squirrel's finally got around to something to you. Take care of yourself. Well, thank you very much, Pandora Squill. And also, thank you for the hydrate. But MMORPGs. 6th grade, I met a kid, and they played RuneScape. And this was one of the first things that actually got me talking with people as well, because being on an MMORPG, being able to communicate with people, it was different. As opposed to playing something where I was used to playing like Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64 or Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Those games don't involve communicating with people. But RuneScape did. I had to talk with people. If I wanted to get certain items in the game, I needed to talk with people. If I wanted to complete certain quests, I needed to talk with people. This was before a lot of the information for those games was actually available online. We didn't have large databases for MMORPGs where every question you could have under the sun was immediately answered in a database. We had people in Falador Square who you bugged in the mines after you sold coal to them, and they told you that, yeah, maybe you'll get a rune scimitar if you fight the Black Dragon, but, you know, do it with a friend who's not going to stab you in the back up in the wilderness. Evolution to Combat or old school? Old school. No, this was 2006. No, No, this was 2003. This was 2003 RuneScape. So this is how I learned how to communicate. I learned how to communicate through mediums like gaming. It made it hard to communicate to people who weren't gamers. This is going to be a little more relevant as we go on. But by the time I get to high school, I start encountering gay people for the first time. Now, my Christian fundamentalism had been very, very firmly seated. It never really got challenged at Drown Barge, except for the fact that I learned how to say swear words. Oh dear, the naughty words, they could come out. But when I get to West Florida High School of Advanced Technology, when I get to my high school finally, a couple of things happen. I have my very first experience meeting people who are gay and feeling grossed out by them. Now, could I explain why I was grossed out about them? At the time, no. The most I could do was fall back on my religion. And when that failed, I actually had a friend of mine challenge me and say, awkwardly, this friend was Catholic. But this friend challenged me and said, hey, do you even know why you don't like gay people? Do you know why you're a homophobe? You realize you're a homophobe, right? And I was like, no, I'm not. I just don't want them to fuck me. And, I mean, while I still do not want somebody who is not of a gender I prefer to have sex with me, using that as an excuse, I realized was one of the most, like, narcissistic things you could say. The idea that every gay person around you thinks that you are somehow worth their time, and you know that specifically, despite me being a guy and having very little ability to tell if somebody actually likes me at all. So, I get a little older, and I end up graduating after having this experience, after having there's another experience I need to talk about, actually, that comes to mind. I had my first experience having to console a friend through sexual assault. Mind, I was a fundamentalist Christian, so my way of consoling that friend, and I do not recommend this because this is the most horrible thing you can tell to somebody at all. My way of consoling this friend was to say, don't worry, God has a purpose for what happened to you. What I didn't realize is I had basically said, God wanted you raped. That's functionally what I had said in that moment. It didn't occur to me how vapidly destructive a statement like that could be. And I've since lost that friend for a variety of reasons, a lot of which can be attributed to me being a toxic piece of shit. Another situation I ran into, which was less about religion and more about the way I viewed relationships. I had this view that I could get with anyone at all, which I don't know how I got that view. I think it might have been losing my virginity at 15. I think that might have made me feel like I was a hot shot of some kind. Hindsight's 2020. I know I'm not. But at the time, that made me feel like I had something other people around my age didn't have. And so, the times I found myself single, at one point there was a person who I did like, and I didn't communicate to them that I liked them. But what I did was I started a friendship with them by sending them a note. This was a person who had almost no friends in the school, and I found out it's because she had a very, very specific way of making friends, and it didn't really preclude her to make friends in real life that easily. I had a crush on this person. I set up I asked my teacher if I could move next to her. She said that was okay. The teacher said that was okay. So I did. And after a few weeks, I admitted that I actually liked her. And then she said, I'll write you a note later. And I said, okay. So she handed me a note and said that I needed to read it when school was out. I read that note, and it says, functionally, If you can't think of me as just a friend, then it's better we both slipped back into anonymity. Basically, I was given a choice. I could either see her as another obstacle to try to get a partner, or I was allowed to maintain a friendship if I discarded those really toxic notions. I decided to keep the friendship, and that helped me a lot growing up, realizing that all things considered, sometimes it's more important just to have a friend who's good. I ended up thanking this person later when I became an adult, because that was one of those situations that kind of slapped my head on straight. So I get out of high school, I go into the workforce, and I don't know if I would have considered myself transphobic at the time, because I had not encountered the idea of a trans person except once. My grandpa had said that he used to have a friend when he was in the military who had turned into a girl, which I didn't even know was a thing that could happen. He told me this when I was in middle school. And that led him to ending his friendship with that person. He was so disgusted with his friend who had turned into a girl that he couldn't maintain a friendship anymore. And I carried that to heart. I was like, yeah, no, that's disgusting. To the point where in high school, I forgot, there actually was one instance where I had met somebody who was trans in high school. I had a friend who was trans. He ended up, at the time, he was an AFAB person. But at the time, I had said things like, God does not make mistakes with your body, to justify saying that, no, you're not trans, you just think you are. And to be fair, not really to be fair, but I made a bunch of other justifications for treating this person the way that I did. They were a very toxic person at the time. So around the time that we get into 11th grade, we basically just become enemies. And I thought in my head, yeah, no, he's just this crazy my thought process was, she's a crazy person who thinks that she's a guy. I have no business being around that type of person. They're nuts. So, fast forward, I use he and they for this individual now because, well, they're a guy. That's how it works. It took me a while to come to terms with the fact that this friend was a guy, because I'd spent so long viewing them, convincing myself that they were a girl. I kept that as a nugget in my head as I grew up and encountered probably one of the next pieces that really would fundamentally change me. There's a partner that I had for about 4 years. Now, this partner, we obviously are not together anymore. We're not even on speaking terms anymore. But there were a couple of things this partner said during our relationship that I didn't agree with. One of which was that gender was on a spectrum. To me, gender and sex were the same thing. They'd said that trans people were valid and all this fun stuff. I had already been confronted with gay people and being able to accept them and not being homophobic myself. I had already taken over those hurdles. I figured those were the only hurdles I needed to worry with. That was it. But now I had these other hurdles to look at. And so during the course of the relationship, I fought and fought and fought and fought and fought. I did everything in my power to find out that this person was incorrect. I found myself watching old Hunter Avalon videos, old videos from No Bullshit. I found myself doing this stuff near the very ass end of our relationship, and it made me a much more toxic person. I discovered Leafy is here back then, and I think discovering Leafy may have been the first step in that pipeline for me. Watching Leafy made the algorithm prime me for watching commentary content, and then that commentary content led me down the anti-SJW rabbit hole. I was watching people like No Bullshit. I was watching people like Hunter, and that, despite the fact that Hunter has changed now, there was an early part of this that was influenced a little bit by him. But it's also when I discovered atheist content. And yes, this person was a feminist. I had several fights with them over me saying feminism is stupid. You should be an equalist, not knowing what actual fucking terms meant at all. It's weird. It was very hard to do things in that relationship, because for me, I was spending so much time trying to be right. I ended up losing the relationship for a variety of reasons, one of which being my massive obstinance. There's a dipshit on the platform who made a video saying that I became an SJW in order to get laid, but that couldn't be further from the truth, because I was an anti-SJW during the entirety of that relationship, and I didn't stop being one until after that relationship. My politics didn't change until the relationship was over. During that relationship, I did discover that I was polyamorous. That was a weird thing. I figured that out because I was at a swingers party and realized that I didn't like anybody there. I found out... That's how I found out I was demisexual, rather. Polyamory came out afterwards. I found out I was demisexual because of being at the swingers party going, I'm not attracted to anybody here. Why am I not attracted to anybody here? I realized later that, oh shit, I didn't have any information on them. I didn't know their personalities. I'm attracted to that. That's an aspect that I need to be attracted to somebody. So that was a thing that I discovered through being there. But there was a couple that we had gone to the party with, and that was how I figured out that I was polyamorous. Because I realized that I wasn't just wanting to be with somebody sexually, I was actively falling in love with them, as well as with the partner that I had at the time. It's how you figure out that, oh shit, not only can I love multiple people, but I'm figuring out the mechanics involved in how I get to that point. Figured out I was poly and demi within a handful of weeks of each other. Figuring out compersion was a lot harder, but that's a story for a different day. So, fast forward, I'm no longer with this person. I have the information that I'm poly. I have the information that I'm demi. I have these things, but I still am pretty fucked up when it comes to trans issues. I recognize, like, I organically come to the conclusion that I'm an atheist. And I guess it made me primed to be watching atheist YouTube, watching Genetically Modified Skeptic, Cosmic Skeptic, Armored Skeptic, Holy Kool-Aid. Started watching a lot of them around this time. And I had a conversation. You see, the Bill Nye the Science Guy episode had aired about gender, and I had all the memes on Facebook about it that had been going around, and I said it to a friend of mine who I played League of Legends with. And this friend was like, actually, the information in that thing is wrong. Now, I need to back up a little bit because there's another thing that I didn't mention that happened after I was in high school. As I was leaving high school, there was a friend of mine who introduced me to the movie Zeitgeist. This is what happens when you have these conversations without notes. But I'm remembering this now because it's triggering that memory. He introduced me to the movie Zeitgeist, which led me to becoming a massive Alex Jones fan. I watched the first and second Zeitgeist movies. I watched Loose Change. I became a 9/11 truther. I believed that the Bilderberg group was controlling everything from the back rooms. All this stuff had been ingrained into me because of this. The friend had shown me the movie in an effort to challenge my faith as a Christian. But what really ended up happening was I maintained my faith at the time, but instead ended up going full-on Alex Jones type of person. I remember having conversations with friends about whether Glenn Beck was a plant or was actually on our side, whatever the fuck our side was at that point. I remember getting very heavily into Chan culture, random B-boards, shit like that. Laughing at people who said things like, I'm going to go on the next rampage. I'm going to beat Cho's high score. Basically saying that they were going to commit another school shooting. This was stuff I found funny back then because, to be honest, I don't know why. To be honest, I don't know why I found those things humorous. Maybe it's because I didn't think of the end result. Like, what I was actually laughing at. But I can't for the life of me put myself in the person I was then's shoes. And empathize with them. It's hard for me to do that at this point. Now, I say that because I was also an anti-vaxxer around that time. And the conversation with this friend about the gender thing reminds me of the conversation I had about vaccines. I had seen a meme on... I'd been an anti-vaxxer for a while, thanks to Alex Jones, and I had seen a meme that was about like, hey, if we if I injected mercury into your child's blood, you'd call me a terrorist. But if a scientist does it, we call him a doctor. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And I said that just offhandedly to this friend. I didn't know this friend actually had a degree in biochemistry. I didn't realize that they would basically sit my ass down and go, okay, we need to talk about the type of mercury that's actually used in vaccines. It's not the thing that you're thinking. And even if it was, the trace amounts that we are using here actually don't create a buildup in the system the way you're thinking. You need a lot of that in your system to build up to get to toxicity levels. We aren't quite there. Like, it was weird. So them telling me about the gender thing that I had been fighting an ex of mine on forever, this was not the first time they had sat me down and basically took me to school on something I had said off the fucking cuff. This is why League of Legends is morally good, people. This is why League of Legends is actually a good thing. So, move on a little further, and I'm watching a video from Vice Rhino. I haven't started my channel yet. But he says something along the lines of gender is a social construct. And remember, I had been primed to fight whenever I heard these words. But I'd been watching Vice Rhino's content for a while, a lot of other atheist content, and these were people I respected. Probably speaks to some internalized misogyny of my own, that my ex at the time was not somebody I was respecting in the same regard, but that's its own can of worms. I hear that, and I instead go, okay, you know what? I'm going to study this. I've been wrong about this when I was sat down with his friend on League. I've been wrong about this. I've been wrong about other things. Let me go ahead and look at this one up. Let me check this one up. And I find that, oh, wait, there's a delineation between gender and sex. There is an argument that sex is socially constructed because it is a descriptive thing that we have associated with biological parameters, and therefore its construction is notably just as social as gender, but it's rooted in things that are a lot more solid than, say, dresses and car toys, and whether or not you're the person who does the dishes. As soon as that clicked in my head that gender and sex were two different things, I didn't do a whole lot more studying on it. Because I kind of got the gist of it. I've done more studying since then. If I had to recommend a paper to read, on JSTOR, there's an article called Doing Gender. It is one of the most fascinating reads when it comes to the history of how gender is viewed, not just in the United States, but in a variety of cultures. And it helped a lot whenever I did a debate against Essence of Thought on gender. So, a lot of this shifted my ideas towards the left, towards progressivism, when it came to social issues, because now I was on board with trans issues. I mean, yeah, there's a delineation between these two. Just like with gay people, it's better for us to fight for their comfort. They're just as valid in their identity as anything else, because that identity is as socially constructed as anything else is. I'm at that point now. But what I'm not at is socialism. We're going to need a few more steps for that to happen. For the longest time, I defined myself, and you can probably find an old video on my channel where I even said as much, that I was socially progressive, fiscally conservative. I'm sure you've heard that term 1,000 times before. That is a statement that most people make when they actually don't know a whole lot about politics. And they find themselves not wanting big spending of their taxes, but they also think gay people should have rights. It's the comfortable, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to hurt people cop-out. So then I start going and watching content creators again. This is back when, like, Vosh was still at 10,000 subscribers. He was a tiny, tiny channel at this point. And there was a thing that was said that socialism just means those who own the means of production, like just workers owning the means of production. Now, bear in mind, for me, I had worked at McDonald's multiple times as a manager and not. Quick Trip for several years as a manager and as not. Walmart for a year. I had worked at Hardee's. I had worked at Kroger. I had worked at a variety of places, all, you know, retail, fast food, etc. I had had my share of being under the corporate ladder and not having my own piece of the pie. The only time I had that was when I was a manager at Quick Trip, because Quick Trip actually gave really fucking good benefits. Gave stock options and all kinds of stuff that helped out a ton when I was able to maintain that job. Fun fact, it was coming to cope with being polyamorous that led to my spiral into being, or having the anxiety and the depression that led me to losing my job with Quick Trip. I was not a healthy person with a healthy mindset. Knowing I was polyamorous and being healthy enough for a polyamorous relationship were two very different things, and I did not yet know how to identify that. Probably a good idea to note when you're healthy enough for certain relationships as well. But I digress. I keep jumping back and forth in the timeline. So I start doing more research into politics, and I start finding out about things like the Southern strategy. Now note, when I was a kid, I had heard that the Republicans were the party of Lincoln. Lincoln freed the slaves. I was the one white kid in a mostly black neighborhood, Montclair, Pensacola. So for me, I was like, yeah, no, cool, Lincoln, that's my president. I like him. Yeah, sure, I was Republican. And then I started discovering that the political parties don't exactly maintain a single ideology throughout the entirety of their lifetime. There are times where they split and morph. Learning about the Southern strategy, learning that the Democrats actually started out very, very far right, but ended up capitalizing on progressive policies, even socialistic policies, and then the Republicans, who were more left-wing at the time, ended up having to go way far right. I mean, the Democrats had basically captured the moderate market. The Republicans lost all their people. They needed to capture a new vote, and they went for the racist white South. And that's how they got their votes back. One of the reasons why our politics in the United States are so fucked up is because we had a right-wing party become the moderate party, and so the left-wing party became the right-wing extremist party. It's why we don't have a proper left in the United States anymore. Because a proper left was never formed here the same way that it would in another country. This is all shit that I didn't know. If you asked me if I was left or right wing, I would have a giant question mark and I would go, I don't know what the fuck those two are. Why do directional markers have to do with politics? That means nothing to me. I wasn't paying attention to the things that the Trump administration was doing at the time. I wasn't paying attention to a lot of that, but I started to. This is after I had started my channel as an atheistic channel. In fact, actually, if you look at the variety of my content back then, a message for my Christian family, atheists are worse than rapists, Islamic teaching on eating pork, is hell a threat, stuff about G-Man, stuff about Islam, stuff, 11 questions with S.J. Thomason, like, all of this is stuff. Like, an early collaboration with Mr. Atheist. This is back when Jimmy had 900 subscribers. And the first thing I ever did on the NIFB is right there. Everything I did around this time, it was all about atheism. because I had been profoundly affected in coming to terms with the fact that I was an atheist. But I didn't know my politics, and I would have called myself an anti-SJW because of the stuff that I had been exposed to. I fought with a feminist partner all the time. I didn't like them throwing their politics in my face. I didn't agree with the things that I'd been seeing. I'd been watching Leafy's here and seeing, leftist cringe shit all the time. For me, I would have called myself an anti-SJW had I actually involved myself more in those conversations. But I didn't at the time outside of privately. So I didn't end up making content like that, because to me, I wanted to make apolitical content on atheism. Now, ignoring the fact that I made like pro-LGBTQ stuff, I hadn't quite squared the idea in my head yet that you can't really divorce religion and politics. When you try, you come to the conclusion that one is interwoven with the other, especially here in the States. You can't stay apolitical for long. So I learned more about what politics are, and I learned the word that describes me. I had been wronged enough times in the workplace that socialists did describe me. I think that a corporation of a sufficient size should not be able to be completely ran from the top down. The CEO of Walmart doesn't give a shit about you. Doesn't know your name. You're not even a number, because to be a number, you have to be worth even thinking about. You can get hired and fired over the course of 10 years, and that CEO doesn't know who you are. I got to the point where I realized I wanted more democratically run large corporations. Now, having a union, having democracy in the workplace, having stuff like that, it doesn't really work very well for like a small mom and pop store when there's 3 or 4 people who are running the store. But it doesn't have to. It's there for the Walmarts. It's there for the Disneys. It's there for the General Motors. It's there for the Fords. It's there for those industries. It's there for the entirety of the construction industry. Hell, the local union is a thing for, that you can see in multiple different countries for construction. What I didn't realize yet is that while unions are an almost expressly leftist organization method, most of the people who find themselves in unions tend to be very, very conservative. It's this weird thing where, like, you'd think if a lot of those people knew more about politics, they would not fight against their own best interests, but that's a story for another day. As I learned to define myself, I came to socialism as a comfortable thing to define myself by. Do I think it's ever going to be accomplished in my lifetime? Probably not. Do I think it's somewhat utopian? Yeah, probably. Healthcare for everybody, workers having democratically run workplaces, owning, food and medicine production, being able to actually control the prices of those things better for people. That seems almost like a pipe dream, especially with all the inflation we're dealing with right now. But it did let me learn a few things that I hadn't considered before. I wasn't a Republican anymore, but I most certainly wasn't a Democrat. The Democrats really didn't stand for the exact stuff that I stood for. Chaos Knight, thank you for the follow. But I did find that, pragmatically speaking, they were one of the few orgs that actually would fight for some of the things that align with some of the things that I care about. I know that most of the used to be anti-SJW, moving into this, usually they're a lot more fantastical. I can't be like a Faraday Speaks type of person who has this whole fantastic story about going down the alt-right pipeline and consuming all of these alt-right thinkers and then like coming out the other end like a beautiful phoenix. I don't have that, because as I was on my political journey, I didn't know what any of this shit meant. I wasn't engaged with the political side of it to the extent I would have needed to be to identify my politics enough to even know a journey was happening. But I am where I am now. I do actually believe the things I believe now. I have the words to describe myself now. Can't be as fantastic of a story as Xander Hall. Can't be as fantastic as as Faraday. I don't think it has to be, though, because for me, it's my story. Me going up from religious fundamentalism, where I said some of the most toxic things about gender and sexuality and assault, to the point where I am today, where I just know better. Maybe it's part of a political journey. Maybe it's a part of growing up. Who knows? But at the end of the day, this is where I am now. But if you've got a story about your journey, about anything that happened in your life, maybe you could let me know in the comment section below. I know this is more of a personal topic. It's less of one where we talk about things happening with Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and bills that are being talked about. It's a little more personal than that. And the video might not get a lot of views because of that, because people like seeing blood sports. They don't necessarily like stories. But you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I wanted to talk about it anyway, and so here we are. I guess I left the whole VTuber part of that conversation out, though, huh? There's a different video for that. That's a different video. That one is literally just, I have a fan base that's weird, and so fan art happened, and now here we are. This is the logical end result of that fan art. I seriously thought you were going to come out as trans after saying you were gender apathetic for so long. Nope. Still consider myself cis. Now, granted, I did discover my gender apathy through doing VTubing. There's burps. For me, the avatar that I used early on in my channel just naturally bled into the avatar that I use now. Like, content kept on going, and then eventually the idea of doing the VTuber persona was posited, and then I did it. And now we're here. But the actual mechanical bits about why that happened, why did I choose a female avatar? Because people were putting a bunch of gender-bent fan art, and I wanted a monkey's paw. I thought it would be funny. I became a VTuber as a troll. I did it to troll my audience. And yet, I didn't end up trolling them. They just went along with it. They just went along with it. And we kept going. In fact, actually, let me find the first video I did as a VTuber. I'm sure I can find it here. Please play. Nope. Nope. Hold on. Here we are. Play the video, please. It's got to be this one, right? Hold on. No, it's not this one. It's not this one. The first VTuber video would have been directly after that. It would have been this political compass video. My mental health. So I cannot hit strongly agree, because as much as I agree with the proposition, I don't agree that somebody else should be able to dictate that. There's our first VTuber video. Sometimes. The freer the market, the freer the people. That is not true. A fully free market leads to... That tracking is way off. We've come a long way since then, haven't we? Jesus Christ. But no, that was just like a logical end result of me going, aha, I will take the lore that people have thrown into the fan art and I'll just make it real. I'll do that. I mean, hell, the fan art that led to that, I could actually pull that up right now since I'm thinking about it. Where are we at? It's not Slime Suris. Video resources. Use in every video. Fan art. presented is this one. Like, that fan art right there, and then this fan art right here. These were the two primary pieces that led to the channel's direction, basically. This is what led to where we are. So does this mean Buff Slime Boy is now lore? No. Fem models are lore. We're sticking with that one. We're sticking with it. I'm sorry, Salem. I'm taking it from you. Bwaha. Bwaha. No, that's discrimination. Of course it is. And I am discriminating against you. But that's I don't think there's really anything else that So basically horny drawing made Suris into what Suris is. Yes. 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 Guys, no more fan art, only Buff Boys. Jesus Christ. So, that's where the channel is at now. That's my journey of where I'm at the moment. Not as fantastical as it could be, but here we are. In any way, shape, or form. I guess hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Maybe check out my Patreon. Past that, if you enjoyed the content, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you actually have gone through. I want to know your political journeys as well in the comment section. With all that said, as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here.